Hi everybody, thanks for joining me today. Let's get right into learning Iron Maiden's awesome new track, The Writing on the Wall. Just a quick note about the tuning before we get going. The acoustic guitar that you hear in the intro is obviously in drop D, so for those of you that might not know, we're going to take our low string and drop it down one whole step from E to D. And the other strings all stay the same as in standard. Now there's also one rhythm guitar that's in drop D. So we're going to cover the parts in drop D as well as what the other guitars would be doing in standard. So we're going to cover all the guitars that you hear in the left and the right channels, all the lead, all the parts are here. You're going to see how all these parts work together to create the sound that you're hearing on the album. Let's get going. The acoustic that the track opens up with, like I said, is in drop D, so be sure to tune that low string down to a D. Everything else just leave the same. And it's all really just based around a D. Once we are in drop D, we can strum all the strings. With the exception of that high string, we can just mute that off by using the pads of our fingers. But we basically just have a nice big D power chord now at that point. So the whole intro is really just based around that and then playing notes out of the D minor scale. So we start off by hitting a low D and then the rest of that chord. Now, I use hybrid picking here, so I use the pick on the G string and my second finger, the middle finger on the second string to kind of pinch the strings, but you don't have to do that. You could just strum those two strings. So we start off by strumming the G and the B strings, and then do a quick hammer onto the third fret with your second finger. Okay, and we do that twice. And then the second time we want to pull off again. And then we do a quick little pull off from 3 to open while we're holding that D on the second string. You want to keep that third finger depressed, and we're just going to play around on that string. And then we come down to the third fret on the D string, back up to a little hammer from 0 to 2 on G, and then open D. Okay? And then we come down to the D string. So 0, 2, 3, up to open G, back to open D. And then we have a little quick pull off here. So after you hit that open D, you want to hammer down onto 3 to 2, and then open again, and then down to the third fret on the A string, and we're going to bend that. Nice slow bend, and then just repeat the open D and chord. Okay, so that's basically our rhythmic figure, and we're going to repeat all this over again, just with a couple of embellishments. So here that is really slow. Now we start repeating this. So we repeat this the exact same as we did the first time around. We repeat that exactly the same again. And now this changes a little bit. We go 0, 2, 3 again on the D string. But now we go open G to the B string, to that fretted D that we have, back to open G. And then we want to hammer on from our open D to the second fret and hold that out a little bit. And then we repeat that second fret and do a little hammer pull here. So we hit that second fret, hammer onto the third, pull back off to the second fret, open D, okay? And then low D, chord. Okay, so that whole intro, nice and slow, goes like this. Let's get into our main hook riff. So right away, our main hook riff showcases the arrangement possibilities that's possible with multiple guitars. So I'll show you the first guitar that we hear. Bear in mind there's an acoustic doubling this too. But that main riff that comes in starts by doing this. So this guitar part is in drop D, and we're really revolving it around a D power chord, okay? So we want to snag the open D and the second fret on the G string to start with, so just the two bottom strings of our D power chord. And then we're going to come down to an open A, third fret on the A, open D, and then the third fret on the D string. Okay, so it's 1 E and a 2. And then we're going to have the open G ringing with the third fret on the second string. Okay, and we kind of go back and forth between that. 2 and 3 and then so we come down to the D string, pull off between 2 and 0, down to the third fret of the A string, and up to that starting 2 string power chord, the D and the second fret on the G string. 1 E and a 2 and 3 and 4 E and then we can repeat this. 1 E and a 2 and only repeat those first 2 beats, and then do our little 2 pull off down to the third fret on beat 3, and then on beat 4 we're gonna hit those 2 bottom strings of the D, then a low D, and then the rest of a big D power chord. Okay, so nice and slow, it's going to look like this. And that plays 4 times in that intro bit. And then this is where it gets really cool because they start layering up guitars. So another guitar comes in after 2 rotations, and actually both the guitars, 2 more guitars come in after 2 rotations, but there's another rhythm guitar that comes in, and it does this okay, so it really is doing a lot of doubling there, but it's just really beefing up that rhythm part. So we're basically doing the same thing, but instead of doing this where we're ringing all those together, we're just going 3 and 5 on the D string. So we start off the same, 1 E and 2 and, so we're on 3 and 5 there on the D string. And then this is all the same. And then we just don't do I'm assuming that guitar's not in drop D. So we're just gonna ring a D power chord for that final beat, and then we can repeat it. And so on. So that main hook riff plays twice, and then we get a second guitar, harmony guitar in the right channel that comes in and plays this. Okay, so it's really just playing everything that just an octave higher than what that main riff is doing, with the exception of this A up here on the 10th fret of the B string. It's just kind of has a nice, hop to it there that really adds to the riff. So what we do is we start with the 10th fret of the B string, and then hop all the way down to our A string on the 12th fret, and then we go 10, 12 on the D string, and then 10, 12 on the G string. Okay, 1 E and a 2 and 3 and then go 9 on the G string, 12 on the D string, and 10. And then that's our riff that sets us up for our repeat. So it's nice and slow. Now we get into our repeat. Get that 10th fret on the B string again. And that's all the same, just starting on the 12th fret on our A string, walk up, 9, 12, 10, and then end on 12 on the D string. Okay, so that's the whole thing. 1 E and a 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 E and a 2 and 3 E and and then we can repeat the whole thing again. Now, after that main hook riff is played 4 times, we get into a D minor scale run followed by some chords here. So it's going to sound like this. Okay, and of course there's another guitar that doubles that, and we'll get into that too to see how they get that huge sound. But this guitar part, we start with a little D minor scale run. So we're going 3-2-0 on the G string, 3-2-0 on the D string, and then 3 and open on the A string. Now that guitar that's more prominent in the left-hand channel, because it's in drop D, it snags those 2 bottom strings at the end there. So it's 1 E and a 2 E and then we come up to a D. Okay? And do that twice. And then we get into C add 9 chord. So we've got the 3rd fret on the A string and followed by the open G and the 3rd fret on the B string, the D. Okay? And you can mute off that D string. If you get it ringing once in a while too, it's not a big deal. It actually goes with these chords. That open D belongs in both the chords, so it's not a big deal if it rings here and there. But then all we do for the next chord is drop our 1st finger into the 2nd fret, and then that's a G over B. Okay, 1, 2, and 4, back up to our D. 1, 2, and 3. And then we just flip-flop back and forth and end on our G over B. Now, this guitar that's in the right-hand channel is doing the same thing as near as I can tell. It's is hitting the same scale run, except because it's not in drop D, we're going to snag the open D and the open A strings, so strings 4 and 5 at the end of that scale run rather than the 2 bottom ones. So between those guitar parts, we're going to hear a big D power chord briefly there at the end of that run. Okay, but that second guitar comes up here and hits a D power chord on the 5th fret of the A string. And then so it copies the chords, except we just do it with power chords here. Instead of having a big ringing chords, we just have a C power chord, 3rd fret of the A, and then we're just moving our 1st finger back and forth. 1, 2, and 4, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and there's those guitars, how they get that sounding huge. And now let's get into our verse section. Our verse is a lot more very similar type stuff of what we talked about, all based around a D power chord. But it does change. There's 2 rotations that is slightly different from when the rest of the band picks up. So those first 2 rotations are slightly different. It's really just based around a static D tonality. And then once the rest of the band kicks in, we also have a little bit of chordal movement, which I'll explain here in a second. So what you hear on those first 2 rotations of the verse riff is this. Okay, so let's just talk about that quick. All that we're doing is we're going to be hammering onto the 2nd fret of the G string with our 1st finger. So we grab that D power chord and we just do that little hammer trick at the beginning. And then we want to go, so hit that D, hammer, and then this is that guitar that's in drop D again. So we can just hit a few of those low strings. You don't have to be super accurate with 1, 2, or 3 strings. Just get some low strings in there for an effect. Okay, so 1 E and 2 and a 3 E and 4. And the strum pattern changes. Like this is a highly almost improvised part. There was no copy paste here because every time the chorus comes, every time the verse comes, it's all slightly different. So you don't have to be super strict with a specific strum pattern, but to get as close as possible as what you're going to hear on that album, it was 1 E and 2 E, a 3 E and 4 E, a 1 E and 2 and a 3 E and 4 E. Okay, so it's just like that, okay? Down, 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 up, up, down, 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 up. that's the sort of strum pattern for that. And then, now, once the rest of the band kicks in, I'm going to go over the guitar that you hear more in the right-hand channel here, because this is where the chordal movement comes in. He's going to do the same trick with that D chord, but he's playing it here at the 5th fret on the A string. Okay, there's the chord movement. At the end, we slide up to the 8th fret, F, down to the 3rd fret, C. Okay? So what that means now is that that riff that we just learned isn't going to work over the whole thing, because we have an F and a C chord there. So just sitting on a static D power chord is going to have some clashing with the rest of the band. So what we have to do is make an adjustment there at the end of that riff so that it works with those chords. So what we do okay, so what I'm hearing is like an F sus2 chord. Okay, so it really beefs it up here. We don't quite play the same sort of thing where everything's ringing. We really attack the strings harder and put some palm muting in there to get some heavier thumping action going on. So what we want to do is keep the same little hammer trick, but we get some dead strings in there. So I like to just lay my middle finger down and release the pressure. And also you're going to want to put a heavy palm mute on the strings, even more than just a palm mute. Maybe cut the strings off completely and just get some dead chunks in there. Okay, and now instead of that run at the end that we had before, because that's not going to work with the F and the C anymore, what we need to do is go 0, 2, 3 on the D string, and now that's an F, so that works nice, right? But when we hit that F, we hit this F sus2 chord, really what it is. So we want the open G in there and the C. And then get a G up there, 3rd fret of the high string. So at the end here, we're going to have 4 strings ringing. The 3rd fret of the D string, open G, 1st fret of the B string, and then the 3rd fret of the high string. And now, they also spice that little thing up by just not doing, it's now, instead of just going 2-0, it's a 2-3-2-0. Okay. Yeah. Now, once the band kicks in, again, we have more guitars coming in. Like I said, we have that one. That's providing the harmonic movement. And then there's another one again that's kicking in and just doubling what this one's doing, except on the 5th fret. Like, and then all those guitar parts together is creating that absolutely massive sound that we hear. Getting into our pre-chorus and chorus sections, these parts are much easier to play than the rest of the tune. What we're going to do, I'll cover the guitar that's in the right-hand channel here first, because that's providing just the basic underlying chords. And we're starting on a C power chord, down to a D, B flat on the 1st fret of the A string, back up to our starting chord C, 3rd fret of the A string. And then that's 4 measures. On our 5th measure, we have that. Okay, that's the underlying chord movement, and that guitar in the right-hand channel just rings those chords out. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, just 1 chord each measure. And then the guitars that you hear on the left-hand side are providing a little bit more motion with the chords, just doing some arpeggiating within those chords. So, and we're also starting on that C add 9 business that we had a little earlier in the intro portion. So that one guitar is playing a C5, and then the one in the left-hand channel is doing that C add 9. So I'll play that guitar in the left-hand channel with a little bit of arpeggiation and some tabs so that you can kind of get the gist of what's going on there. Right now, you might have noticed at the end of that last measure, I put in a little bit of movement, and we'll talk about that because there is a little bit of movement there. So what we're doing is just ring these chords. And like I said, it's going to be a little bit different every time. You don't have to arpeggiate these the exact same way, but just hold them for a measure and arpeggiate within that. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So on, right? Just kind of pick them out. And now the measure that we have to talk about, that final one, that 5th measure, right, is a funky little rhythm there. And I won't get too into the counting here, but because it's kind of a feel thing, you can feel this pretty easy. So you just have to remember you want 6 strikes on that chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and that last one, the guitar in the left-hand channel, is doing a quick little movement there from the C5. We're leaving that C5 behind, and we're going to move down to the 4th fret of the G string and only hit those 2 strings. So, and then into our chorus. And so then that means that the guitar in the right channel is duplicating that by doing a quick G over B, okay? Into our chorus. Now I only hear that chord movement at the end of the first pre-chorus into that first chorus. The second pre-chorus doesn't seem to have that. So like I said, they had some fun with this, played around with it. It's not the exact same every single time, but I think it's pretty cool. If I was playing that live, I'd probably put that into the chorus every time because it's pretty cool. Now the second pre-chorus is a little bit different than the first. There's an extra 4 measures there that wasn't there in the first pre-chorus. So the second verse is just 2 rotations of the verse riff. And then we get into this new 4 measure section that we didn't have. A C add 9. That's the chord that we encountered in the intro portion. Just dropping our first finger down to the 2nd fret to get our G over B. And then we're gonna have 2 measures of D. And then we get into our pre-chorus, how we just learned it for pre-chorus 1. Everything's the same there. So just a quick playthrough of pre-chorus 2 would look like this. So there's our pre-chorus. The chorus is, again, really simple. Probably the easiest section. Again, the chordal movement here for the chorus is a D. We start on a D, and then we're going to move up to an F. So I'm in drop tuning, so my F is just going to be barring across the 3 bottom strings on the 3rd fret. And then up to a C power chord. And then G. So barring across the 3 bottom strings at the 5th fret. So that's the start of the chorus. We play that 3 times. D, F, C, G. And the only time that we're going to alter that rhythm on either channels is just when we hit that G. We're just going to go 3 and a 4. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 and a 4. 1. Play that 3 times. And then we come to a B flat, to a C, B flat, to a C. That's the last 4 measures of our chorus. Okay, and then we get back into our hook riff there. So all that we're doing, just 8th notes on that B flat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and up to the C, and we do a horse gallop rhythm. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and up back to our B flat. 2 and 3 and 4 and then we just stop on beat 4 for our last measure. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. And back into that. Now, our guitar in the right channel, again, copies all these chords. just put a palm mute on the B flat and the C. And then away we go. Getting into our rhythm underneath the first solo, it's nothing too new here because we've already tackled the worst of it. Taking our trick that we did with the D power chord where we're hammering onto the G string, we're just going to move that down a string set to the A. Okay, so 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3, 4. So what we have is an F and a G at the end, and now I'm in drop D tuning, so I'm just barring the 3rd and the 5th on the bottom 3 strings. If you were in a standard tune guitar, just do an F and a G power chord, 1st fret and 3rd fret of your low string. The second time is a bit different. So that second time we go from a C power chord, 3rd fret of the A string, to a G, bar the 5th fret, and then the whole thing just repeats. Coming out of that first solo, we get into a harmony line. Okay, so let's just talk about the chords underneath that first. It's pretty simple. We're just using a D for almost all of it. So 5th fret of the A string. You could probably come up with something there just with an open D as well. Coming down to a B flat and a C at the very end of it. But this is what the rhythm is that they're doing. Okay, so I hear some good shaking there too. So I'm kind of bouncing off of open D power chord to that power chord at the 5th fret to create some nice movement there. And then the first time at the end we go B flat to C. And then the second time we just come down to a C and hold it for 2 beats. And then we repeat that section. And then we get into our harmony line between those 2 solos, and we're fiddling around with a D power chord again. We've got our key change back to the key of D. So we'll go over the low harmony first. We're starting on the 5th fret of the A string up to the 7th fret of the D string. Okay, so we hit the 7th fret twice, kind of make that first note short by releasing the pressure. And now hit it a 3rd time, up to the 8th fret, 7, 5, come down to the A string, 8, 5. And then we go 5, 7, 8, up to the 5th fret on the D string, back down to 8, 7, 5 on the A string. And then come down to your B flat, so 1st fret of the A string, and we're really just doing power chords but picking them apart, arpeggiating the power chord. So 1st fret A string, 3rd fret D string, come back to the C on the 3rd fret of the A string, 5th fret of the D string. So you're just 2 power chords there. And then repeat that. And the second time, just hit a C power chord, and then repeat the whole thing. Now the higher harmony guitar is doing the exact same thing, just an octave higher. Now there's no live footage of this song yet. So the nice thing about having live footage is you can see exactly where on the fretboard they're playing this and how these notes are arranged. But until we have some live footage that we can really make a definitive video on this, we just kind of have to guess where they were playing this. So you could play the exact same thing just up here. Just like that. But I'm going to arrange it so that it's kind of within our home bass D minor pentatonic pattern here around the 10th to 12th fret. So the way I would choose to play this, okay, So let's go over that quick. We start on the 12th fret of the D string and hop up to the 10th fret on the B string. Up to the 11th, back to the 10th, 12 and 10 on the G string, down to the 12th on the D string. Okay, repeat the 12th fret on the D string, 9, 10, 12 on the G string, back to 10 and 9, and then 12 on the D string. And then we want to come down to the 8th on the D string, 10th on the G, 10th on the D, 12th on the G. And then repeat. And then instead of just hitting a power chord like we did on this one, right, we just hit the C note. And then we can repeat that part. And then we're into the second solo. So let's talk about what the rhythm guitar does underneath that second solo. The rhythm underneath the second solo is classic Maiden. It just creates a really nice soundscape for our Adrian to do his melodic solo over top of. So let's just go over the chord progression quick. It's really simple. We're just starting on the 5th fret of the A string, and we're going to come down to a C, and then B flat for almost 2 measures, but then we're going to come up to a C at the end of that 4th measure. So I'll play the rhythm, and then we'll talk about that. Okay, so it's just the same thing that repeats all the way through the solo. And you just have to get some funky muted strums in there to really make the part pop. 1 and up, and. So it's like a down, down, up, up, down. You just have to get those mutes. Down, down with a mute, up, and then up with a mute, and down. Okay, and then we do that 3 times, once for each chord. And then on the 4th measure, we do that same funky rhythm that we had in the pre-chorus, except we're going to slide up to a C. So you want to hit that B flat 4 times. But then on the 4th, when you hit it the 4th time, you want to slide up to C. Okay? And then hit that C twice more. Okay, so there's the whole rhythm section. Okay, now that plays for the whole solo, and to get out of that back into the chorus, we do a really cool harmonized octave thing. So you play that, and then the very last rotation, you only play the 1 measure of B flat. So you play the D, C, B flat, and then, okay, the lower harmony does that. We're just walking up with octaves here. And we're just going up the D minor scale, really starting on B or B flat. So what you want to do is put your first finger on the 1st fret of the A string and your pinky on the 3rd fret of the G string. Okay, so that D string is going to be muted off in between. And you just slide this shape up as we go. So you're going to start on the 1st fret, B flat, sliding up to C on the 3rd fret, D on the 5th fret, E on the 7th fret, to F on the 8th fret, and ending on G on the 10th fret. Okay, and now the higher harmony comes out of that rhythm progression by doing this. Okay, so what we're doing is starting the same octave shape on the A and the G strings, but we're starting on the 5th fret up to the 7th, 8th, G on the 10th, A on the 12th, and then skip all the way up to the 15th, C. Okay, so those 2 guitars are playing those octaves a third apart, and it's creating a nice huge sound, really interesting to get back into the chorus. And that basically wraps up all of our rhythm guitar. The outro of the song is just really tacking a D power chord onto the end of the chorus. So we're gonna do that. And then it just kind of slows down. And just, that's all it is. It's, the progression just slows down and then tack a D power chord on at the end. And then of course you do hear a rhythm guitar imitating what was kind of played in the intro, that okay, so all that we're doing there, just like I said, imitating the intro, we're grabbing a D and then we're doing that hammer from 2 to 3 on the G string. And then pulling off from 3, 2, 0. And we're ending on the F there, the 3rd fret of the D string. And then we come up to an open G. And then we go 2, 3, 2 open on the D string, down to the 3rd fret on the A string. And then just lightly hit the open D, or maybe the open D with the 2nd fret, just to kind of have a nice fade out on that D sound. There we go. Solo 1 is short and sweet. We start with a little pickup into the first measure of the solo, and that pickup is a little F major triad sweep. So what we're doing is starting 2nd finger on the 14th fret of the G string, and then we're gonna pick the 13th fret on the B and the E. So do a downstroke through all of those, and then come back with an upstroke to get the 15th fret on the B string. And then bend that 15th fret on the B string, and hold it for 3 beats. And then you want to do another bend on it, but this time snag the G string as well underneath that 3rd finger to get both strings bending at the same time. And it gives that really grindy blues sound, very intense and emotional sort of sound, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and really milk that one. Let it come down, like really let them fall. Okay, and then we come down to the 13th fret on the B string and the 14th fret on the G string. Okay, so that little thing. And then we come up to some more really bluesy type licks. We're gonna slide into the 19th fret on the G string and bend it. And then the 17th fret on the B and the E. So pick B, the B string, the E string, back to the B string, and then bend 20 on the high E string, and then release it. And then we do this, a little kind of hammer pull off thing, where we're gonna pick the 17th fret on the high string, and then hammer to the 20th fret and pull off, and then hammer to the 19th fret and pull off. Okay? Down to the 20th fret on the B string, back up to the 17th fret on the high string, and then bend the 20th fret on the B string, and release it. And when you release it, you give it some really wide vibrato. Okay, now when I do wide vibrato like that, I always will mute off the other strings around it. So what I like to do is I put my middle finger on the high E string and my pick on the G string, and that way I can shake that thing and it's not gonna get all this, like all this other extra noise going on, right? You can, and then shake it and it'll be nice and clean for you. So far we've got this. Okay, now we go back to the 19th fret on the G string. Okay, so we want to bend it, and then when it's bent, we pick it again, and it gets that. So, and then make sure you get that, let it fall down. And then we hit the 17th fret, down to the 19th on the D. And then we do a little slide back to our 17, 17, 17 on the B and the E strings. So slide into 17 on the B string, 17 on the E, back to 17 on the B, and then play that 20th fret bend again on the high string. And then release that again. 19th fret, half a step bend. So we want to pick it and then bend and release. And then we go 17, 19. And then we go 20, 19, 17, really fast pull off to 20 on the B string, 17 on the high string, and then bend that 20th fret again and slide down with it. Okay, so the next little part of that solo. And then we come down to the 17th to the 15th position where we can bend with our third finger, the 17th fret, and we bend that 17th fret 1.5 steps, and then let it go and go 17, 16, 15 on the B string. So, and then we're going to slide into the 19th fret with our third finger on the G string, and we're going to finish this all off with just straight triplets here. 19 on the G string, then 17 and 17 on the B and the G, down to 19 on the D string, back up to 17 on the G string. And now we're going to do a double stop bend. Put your third finger in the 19th fret, and we're going to get both the B and the G strings bent. So bend them up just a little bit, and you don't have to be super accurate with how far to bend it. We're just going for that bluesy, grind. So the 19th fret, and release them. So you're going to hit both strings twice. Bend, release, and then down to the 17th fret on the G string, back down to the 19th fret on the D string, back up to 17 on the G, and then you're going to bend the 19th fret on the G string and pull off to 17, and that's the end of the solo. So that last little bit is 3, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, and there's the whole solo. Nice and slow. Since it's really short, let's go through it. Now, Adrian's solo is a great solo, very melodic, lots of cool stuff going on in here. We start off with a little dive bomb on the low string. And like I said way back in the intro of this video, I believe his guitar is tuned to drop D because when he hits that low string, it's the pitch of D. So the only way he'd do that on a standard tuned guitar is he'd have to already have the bar depressed when he hit it. So I'm in a standard guitar right now. So when I performed it, I did do that. I pushed it down first and then hit it. But common sense kind of says it would be much easier just to hit a guitar that's already drop tuned and dive it that way. But if you're on a standard guitar and you just want to duplicate that, dip your bar a little bit first, because if you tried to play it along with the album, it's not going to sound in tune because it'll be an E, not a D, right? But we start with that. You just hit the bottom string and then dive it a little bit. And then we come up and we're in D minor here. So we're just in pentatonic home bass at the 10th fret in D minor pentatonic. And we do a little hammer from 10 to 12. And then grab the 13th fret on the B, that was on the G string. Then grab the 13th fret on the B string and bend it. Right, so you want to hit it first, hold it for a second, bend it, release, and then come back to the 10th fret on the G string. And then we're going to slide down and we're down here at the 5th position. Okay, and you're gonna go 5, 7, 7, and then really dig in. That second time you hit that 7th fret, kind of give it a good shake. And then go 5, 7, and then we come up to the B string and go 5, 6, 5, a little quick hammer pull, and then 7, 5 on the G string, and then 7 on the D string, and give it some vibrato. Okay, and then I just grab a random note on the A string and slide up, because we're gonna do this thing. All that we're really doing is falling down the triads that belong in the D minor scale. So when we slide up and start on the 10th fret of the G string, and then we're gonna come down and hit the 12th on the A and the D. Okay, so palm mute everything that's not on the G string so that those notes on the G string really pop. And we get a cool sliding effect down that G string. So 10 on the G, 12 and 12 on the A and the D. Hit that 10 again on the G and slide down to 9. And then hit 10 and 10 on the A and the D. Hit 9 on the G and slide down to 7. Hit 8 on the A and the D. Hit 7 on the G and slide down to 5. Hit 7 and 7 on the A and the D. Up to the G for 5, slide down to 3. 5 and 5 on the A and the D. Hit the 3rd fret on the G string and slide down to 2. Okay, so all together. And give it a really good shake. And then we're gonna slide up back into 10th position, and we're gonna outline the harmony, because if you remember, our harmony is going D to C at the top of our progression. So he outlines those 2 chords. And we do a little sweep picking thing here to begin with. We outline a D minor chord, but he actually embellishes it a little bit by adding the 2nd degree in here. We pick the 12th fret of the D string, and then with an up pick, hit the 9th fret of the G string, and then quickly shift up, and then we're gonna sweep pick through the 10th frets on the G, B, and E. And then we wanna actually repeat that 10th fret on the high string with an upstroke before we get into our little melody line. So we're gonna go. Okay, so that sweep pick thing is down, up, down, 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 up. And then we're into the rest of our little melody line on that D chord. We're going 12 on the high string, 13, and pull off to 12 and 10. Come back to 12 on the high string, 10, and then 13, 11, 10 on the B string. Okay, and now we're gonna shift down and do the same sort of thing with a C chord, but we're not gonna do any sweep picking. We can just go straight up the triad. Okay, so we're gonna go starting on the D string, 10, 9 on the G string, and then 8 and 8 on the 2 high strings. Shift up to the 10th fret, and then go 12 to 10 pull off, and then we're gonna hit the 13th fret on the B string, back up to the 10th fret on the high string, back to 13 on the B string, and then go 11, 10 on the B, and end on the 12th fret on the G. And I've written in the tab to ring those together, because you can hear those ringing together when he does that 13 and 10. Okay, now we skip up to the B string 13th fret and bend that. And now we get into the fastest, perhaps the most complicated lick of this solo. I'll just play it slow, the whole thing to begin with, and then we'll go through it. Okay, so what we're doing is bending that 13th fret, and then we're coming up to the high string and going 10, 12, and then you want to pick 13 and then legato back through 12 and 10. Okay, and then go down to 13 on the B string, back up to 10 on the high string, pull off on the B string 13 to 10. Now come down to the G string 12 and bend that. Go up through the 10th frets on the 2 high strings and pull off between 13 and 10 on the B string again. Okay, so far we have this. And now we want to come back to the G string, bend 12, and then release it. Do a little pull off 12 to 10. Okay, and then we're gonna we're gonna kind of repeat that little pull off. Come down to the G string, or the D string, and hit 12. And then by rolling your finger, hit the 12th fret on the G string with a pull off back to 10. Hit the D string 12, and then pull off between 12 and 10 on the G string again. Come back to that D string 12, and then come up to the 10th fret on the G string. And then we're gonna pull off between 12 and 10, and then come to 12 and 10 on the D string. And then on the A string, you want to hit that 12th fret twice. Okay, so watch my picking closely here. Now after that's done, we get into probably the most emotional part of this solo, very melodic. We're going to, this is also a very hard jump because we're finishing a very fast line. And we have to jump all the way back up to the high string, the 13th fret on that high string, and bend that. And then release it. And then come up to the 15th fret of the high string, bend that. And now what we want to do is bend it again, but this time, just like we did in that first solo where we snagged the string underneath with our third finger, you want to snag both those strings, the top two strings, and really overbend that. So you bend it once, a whole step, and then by snag both strings and overbend them, and then come back and then just bend them a whole step again. So, and when I'm talking about whole step, 1.5 steps back to whole step, I'm really only worried about the high string. Just focus on bending that high string the right amount, and the other one will just follow along. So we go whole step, snag both, 1.5 steps, back to 1 step. Now release it slow, pull off to 13, and then come back to 15. So we want to go 15 on the two high strings, E, B, and then back to 13 on that high string, okay? So yeah, nice and slow. Okay, then we come down to the B string, 15, G, 14, 13 on the B string, and then 15, sliding up to 18, back to 15. Then come down to the 17th fret of the G string, back up to the B string, 15, 18, back to G, 17, B, 15, and then a quick little pull off between 18 to 15. Okay, then we want to repeat that 15th fret on the B string, and then bend 18, up to the high string, 15, 17, come back to the 18th fret on the B string, bend it again, release back to 18, 17, 15, come down to the 17th fret on the G string, and now there's a dead little, just a dead muted string in there. And I use that to shift back. Okay, so that little thing looks like this. Okay, so you want to shift back and play the 15th fret again, but this time with your third finger. And then we're going to get into this falling down our pentatonic scale. So we go 13 on the B string, 14 and 12 on the G string, come down to the 10th fret, 12th fret on D. And then, this is a very implicit note, but if you slow it down, you can hear it, a little slide in there. So what he's doing is just doing a quick slide from 9 to 10, and then going up our pentatonic scale. So go 9 to 10 on the G string, and then hammer from 10 to 12 on the D string, 10 to 12 on the G string, 10 on the B string, quick little pull off between 13 and 10, back down to the G string 12, back up to the B string, 10, 12, 10, 13, and then hit the 15th fret twice. And the second one's a nice short staccato note. And then that's where I shift to my first finger so that I can be in position to finish this solo off. So that whole little thing, starting from our really melodic bends, is gonna go like this. Okay, now we can finish off this solo. We're in position here on the 15th fret with our first finger. And we're just gonna do some unison bending between the G and the B string. We're gonna bend the 17th fret on the G string. Okay, so our idea is just to have a bunch of D notes. We're just gonna hear a bunch of Ds. Okay, so we bend the 17th fret, a whole step, come up to the 15th fret on the B string and hit that twice. Bend the 17th fret on the G string again. Back up to the 15th fret, hit that twice. 17th fret, bend one more time. And then we're actually gonna come up and hit the 15th fret on the B string 3 times. Okay, so we have this. And the timing of that would be 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 and, okay? And then we get out of this solo, cool little run. It's nice how it just seems to flow from this last note. Okay, so what we do is we pick that 15th fret again, and we hammer up to 17 and 18, up to the 15th fret of the high string, back to 18 on the B string, and then we want to go 15, 17, and then back to 15 with 2 hits. Okay, and then we jump up to the 20th fret and bend that, back to an unbent 20, 18, 17, 15, and then come down to the B string, 18, 15. Okay? And there's Adrian's solo. This is the lead in the first chorus, and all the other leads throughout the other choruses are pretty much the same thing. There's some minor variations, but if you've got this down, then you're good to go on the rest of it. So what we're gonna do is start with a unison bend. We put our first finger 10th fret B string, and then we're gonna bend the 12th fret on the G string, and so that's an A on the B string, and we're gonna bend the G up to an A. So we have the same pitch. And we're gonna go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and... So we're just really strumming 8th notes with a little 16th note at the beginning just to get up into pitch. Okay, and then so we go for 1.5 measures, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and then we come. Okay, so we come down to the 10th fret on the G string. Hit that twice, and then actually 3 times, because we're gonna do a 10, 9, down to 12 on the D string. Okay, and then we come back to our unison bend and do that for 2 more measures. And then we go, so we go a little hammer from 10 to 12 on the G string, and then a 9 to 10 hammer, with a little fall again, 10, 9, 12, coming down to the D string. Then we come back up, and we repeat 1.5 measures of our unison bend. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and then this time we stay on the 12th fret. Okay, so we go 12, 12, 12, 10, 9, and then we get into the next part of our chorus where we're going to the B flat and C chords. Do a little different melody over top of those. Okay, so we go 12 on the D string, 12, 12, 9, 10, 12, up to the G string, and then down to the 9 on the G string. And then we start doing a little horse gallop on that 9. 1, 2, and a 3, and a 4. 1, and then we're gonna repeat this little melody starting on the D string. So slide into the 12th fret on the D string. 1, 2, 3, and then up to the G string. 9, 10, 12, 9. And we're gonna do a little horse gallop just for 1 beat. 1, 2, and then we go up to 10, and then a hammer pull from 9 to 10, and then come down to the D string, 12, 10, 12. Okay, so that's the lead. in the first chorus, and like I said, the other choruses are virtually the same. There's minor variations. If you really want to know note for note the other choruses, let me know. The only other leady bit that I didn't cover was the lead that you hear in the final chorus. But that's really just improvising around in the D minor pentatonic scale. You know, lots of stuff like that. So, you know, it's D minor pentatonic. See if you can figure it out. If you absolutely want to know every note that's going on there, again, let me know and I'll whip up a video for that. But I think that we've pretty much covered everything you need to know. Get out there and play it live. Have some fun. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching this Iron Maiden guitar lesson. Now you know how to play The Writing on the Wall. It's a great new track of theirs. I had a lot of fun putting this together. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I've got tons of great songs on my channel. Just go find the tab for them right there on the screen. Simple to follow. Drop me some suggestions in the comments, and I'm going to see you next time.